So back in Visual Studios, we're going to be making a 2D array to store all the value of the pieces, because right now it's just spawning them in and the computer's not storing them. And the good thing about storing them is later we can do other stuff like wind detection and making it so it can't spawn in a piece in a full row. So start off, we're going to be making a 2D int array. So to do that, you do int, you use these brackets again, but we're going to put a comma in to show that it's 2D. I like to call it board state. You can call it other things, but I think board state works well. So yeah, this is going to be our x variable, or the bottom, and then this is going to be the y. Similar to like math or graphing, we're going to be using basically the same system. So after these, we're going to be making our board state. But actually, before we do that, we just need to have determine the actual length of the array and the height of the array. So we're going to make two more public variables. This will be a public int. We'll say this is height of board. And if you look back at a Connect 4 board, the height of the board is 6. And another one, obviously, for the length. And the length of a board is 7. And you can use different numbers if you want to. It might look funny. You'd have to probably make a different board, but in theory you could change these numbers and the code should still work. You would have to have another input field, and like adjust the camera view and all this stuff, but at least code-wise it would still work. So now that we have our int and our lengths of this, we need to create the int, or with the correct like ranges of it. So to do this, you probably have done this before. You create a new int, and then just inside of this, we're going to have the length of the board and the height of it also. So now this is just saying the board state, it's going to be a new one, and then this is our x variable, that's our y variable. So it'll be, board state will have 42 slots available in it. And we're going to be using an int array instead of the bool array, because you might be thinking, well, we should be using bool because it's either player 1 or player 2, but the piece can actually be empty. So there are actually 3 states. It's going to be 0 is empty, 1 is player 1, and 2 is player 2. You can type this in if you want to. This is just a reference so you can figure out what each number is going to represent. And a quick reference of the board. So when you create it, it'll look something like this, with 7 on the bottom and 6 up here. When we create it, it's filled all in zeros. And say we put in a spot like here. We put in a spot in so this would be 0 column, 1 column, 2 column. So it would be like a 1 there. And then say player 2 goes in this column, so it would be down here. And then if you notice when you put these pieces in, like I can't put a piece in right here because it would just fall down to the bottom. So it always will go down to the bottom. So that's something to know when we actually update the board. We only need to know the column it's in, and then we can just base it off of how many are in the row. So now if we go and create a function to update the game manager, we're going to call this update. But instead of the normal update that we already have, we're going to call this update board state. And we're going to need an int, which is just the column again. And we don't need an int for, or we don't need a bool for which player's turn it is, because we're going to be just accessing this one up here. So in the update function, if we're looking right here, we need to first figure out which column it is, which we already have that. And then we're going to search through the entire column, starting at the bottom, and then seeing if it's a 0. And if it's a 0, we're going to change it to whichever piece it needs to be. So right here, we're going to say a for loop. We're going to start at, actually there's a shortcut for this. If we type for and press tab, so I press tab there. After you type in for, then it kind of fills in this template that I use. And I do this a lot just because it saves time. So this we're just going to leave it there. The length of this is just going to be the height of the board, because we don't want it to be going over over the top here. We just want it to stop right here. And if it just keeps on going past here, it'll show up an error because it's out of bounds. It'll show like a array out of bounds error or something. So we first need to check if the board state, we're going to be accessing, let's see, so we're going to be accessing, the column is the X, so we're going to say column. And for the Y variable, we're just going to be accessing, starting at the bottom going up. So this would be Y equals 0. And this is what the I is for. Actually, I'll keep it at I. Or wait, what is, I guess I could call it a height. Or I guess column's supposed to be a row. So yeah, I'll just rename all these to row real quick, just so it's a bit easier. Okay, so if this is a 0, which means that it's empty, we want to change this to a player's piece. So then we'll say another if it is player 1's turn. Then we want to change the board state to be the column again. So say we're trying to put it in this one, it'll be the column, and then again, this, say this 0 is going to be turning into a 1, so it's going to be the column and row again. And for this, if it's player's 1's turn, so we need to change that to a 1 using our reference up here. And then obviously for the else, we're just going to have it go to 2. So now let's save this. The only thing else we need is we need to update the board state at the start of our take turn. We don't want to do it at the end because it's going to be flipping the player's turn. We want to do it at the start so the player's turn is the actual turn we want. So we're just going to say update board state. Okay, now save it. Oop. Oh, we need the column number. So the other thing we need to put before we go back into Unity is we need a way for it to display the actual piece that's being spawned, because it's kind of hard for Unity to show which one is actually being spawned in the like the inspector. So we need to put this little function in here so it shows pieces being spawned at and then the column, comma, the row number. So this will just make it so it spawns and it'll show us that it's spawning at this one, comma, this one. So put that. The only other thing we need is when it goes and loops through, so it'll go through this one and it'll go up to this one, and it's just like, oh, this is a 0, so we need to stop there. So it shouldn't keep going up. So after it finds one right here, so let's see, after it's found one, we want to actually put this inside because this is when it's actually found one. Say found empty spot. So right here, get rid of that. We want it to break. So this just makes it stop the loop here. And you can see it highlighting there, so it tells you which one it's actually breaking. So yeah, stop the loop and it will display the right column. So if we save and go back into Unity, press play, just make sure everything works. So you spawn a piece in here, it says 3, 0, says be 0, 1, 2, 3, and it's at the 0 spot. If you spawn a piece on top, now it says 3, 1. And we can just do this for all the points real quick and make sure it works. The last thing we're going to fix for this video, as we see if we get to the top here, it still spawns in a piece here. But it won't, it'll kind of break the grid system too. So the last thing we're going to fix is that it only spawns in a piece that's in a column that's not full yet. So let's go back. In the update board state, we're going to change this to a bool. So now it returns true if it's found a spot and it's available spot, and then false if it's not one. So up here, instead of this just saying update, we're going to say if it returns true. So if the board space is available, we're going to execute all this code. And then if it's not available, we're just going to not trigger anything. So in here, it's just showing an error because now we need to return true or false. So instead of breaking now, saying that it's found one, we're going to say, we're going to want to return true. There you go. And here, we're going to want to say return false. Because if it loops through up to here, and it'll go one by one and get up to here, and if it gets up to this one that doesn't exist, well, that means the column's already full and we're trying to spawn one in a column that is full. So that means we want to return false. And I'm just going to put a little debug statement. Actually, I'll type it out again. Debug, this time I'm going to say warning, log warning. Just because this is something that's kind of an error, but it's like okay because we're fixing it. But like generally the player's going to be trying to spawn in a piece that isn't full. It's not in a full column, but if it's in a full column, we just want to put a little error message for ourselves, just to show that the code's also working too. So let's see, column. So we're going to say column plus the column number, and then we're just going to say is full. So if we save this and go back into Unity and see if we spawn the pieces again, it shouldn't look that exciting until we get to the top. See. Yeah, see, it says column 3 is full and it won't let us spawn in a piece there, which that's good. So now, I think that's like a full game. If you really wanted to, you could be done with the like series, and like this is basically it. We already kind of made the full game. We haven't done like detecting which player won and other stuff, which could be doing later, but in theory this is like a full Connect 4 game. Like if you were playing the board game with someone, you'd have to figure out who won anyways, and it fixes all the bugs. There's some other ones, like if I double click real quick, spawn 2 pieces in, then it does kind of break it a little bit, but some of that stuff we'll fix later. But yeah, for the most part, that's basically it. We're going to be doing more stuff that we can do just because this is code based and like a video game based. Like the next episode, we're going to be putting a ghost piece on top so it shows the player which one or which column it's going to be choosing from and putting the piece into. So that's it for this episode.